I started off as mage largely because everyone remembers the propaganda before TBC came out about how like, oh, warriors are gonna be terrible. It's a dead class in TBC.
Was it really propaganda though? Like if you think about prior to the SSC TK nerf, I mean, just think about how often melee were dead. And like, would you really? I mean, there was guilds that did the whole cheese strat of the ogre suit, you know, for Lady Vash. But I mean, until like that nerf, like I mean, warrior really still wasn't that good. They still did good damage, but I mean, the mechanics just kind of blew them out. They didn't have all the armor pen. Also, like, I mean, it kind of was true early on, I feel, but do you not feel that way?
Well, in phase one, absolutely, they were awful. It was atrocious. That's in phase one. I was like, okay, well, yeah, I see what they were talking about. But at least in my experience in phase two, it depends on what sort of guild you're in, I guess. Like the faster you can kill stuff, and the more you can kind of guerrilla each boss, the more you can get away with the run.
Yeah, I'm really just thinking of like pre-nerf Lady Vash and pre-nerf TK, and more Lady Vash. Like there was just so many punishing, like with the green like slime and everything. There was so many punishing mechanics for the warriors. But sorry, I didn't mean to derail you. I just hear that all the time that everybody was wrong, and I was like, well, they were kind of right. Like, and a lot of people said they'll be good later.
Well, you're right. I think in that there was definitely mechanics in that for like portion of the game that were required. You had to play better if you wanted to do well as a melee. You couldn't just sit there in one spot and just stand and not look at your screen, roll your face on the keyboard, and expect to do fine. Like if you wanted to be a warrior who was capable, or just any melee class really, who was capable of doing decently on Vosh, you had to be like, you would do stuff like try hard stuff, like bring the ogre suit, and you had to be very careful to save your potion cooldown in case you got rooted in slime, so that way you could save yourself. Right. And I mean, it definitely helped also if you had healers who were on the ball who could react to like, oh, you know, this guy needs a freedom, otherwise he's going to die. So,
and also the tank aggro seemed different. Like it seems the tanks are keeping aggro way better now than they were in phase one with like without the expertise and all that. Like I could be wrong, but like it seemed like melee was taking aggro way more often earlier on in the game than now.
Yeah, well, early on in the game, I think it's largely just because the tanks had to wear a bunch of chonk gear, right? They just had to wear nothing but the highest stam defense stuff they could find, because that was the bare minimum of what you needed. And like now they can wear that same sort of gear that also has a ton of DPS stats on it too, so that way they get the best of both worlds. But yeah, I don't know. I think it largely depends on like your specific guild's experience. To me personally, once I got to phase two and once we got into SSC and TK, the melee were doing fine. On my warrior consistently, I was probably, in my specific experience, but just more on average, I'd say warriors were usually in the top 3 for overall damage for SSC TK. So
oh yeah, with the trash and everything.
Yeah, obviously the trash helps, of course, because you can cleave. But yeah, even as early as phase 2, like the speed runs I was doing would stack up to 5 or 6 warriors in one run. Not all of them, but
yeah.
I think most people, even if they said warrior would eventually get better in TBC, nobody really thought it would be by the time you got to like SSC TK. So to me, at least, it was propaganda, like I said, just because I think maybe for a more average guild, I guess it makes more sense why a warrior would have had a rougher time back then. But
and even if you had to like wait it out a phase, right? Like you can be not great for one phase and then do really well, right? Like I feel like they made it sound like all of TBC warriors are going to be just like bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, exactly. People made it sound like for the game, like half the boss fights you couldn't DPS for half the time, and you'd be dead every boss fight. And
like you'd have to just stand in the corner and wait for them to come back in. Yeah, that's what it sounded like. I'm in
complete regret phrase. I wish I would have been benched phase 1 and 2, and my main was Fury right now because I'm having a blast. I'm actually like, I've got some gear now. Like I've been doing raids with my Fury Warrior, and it's so much more fun than the Warlock. Oh my god, it's so much fun. And so, I'm just wishing I had just been patient.
I think a lot of us are in that spot. I mean, that's exactly where I was going with me starting off maining mage, because I thought, well, it's going to be terrible. Well, it turns out, I think it's a pretty common sentiment, actually, the former warrior mains of vanilla, of which there are a lot, that are thinking like, well, maybe Should have just stuck with the warrior after all.
Yeah. Maybe I should have just stuck with it. Then I could have had the spot in the guild, set. Thank you very much for checking out Warcraft Reloaded podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future content.